Okay, well, I have 12:01, so I think we will get started. Thank you all for joining. I'm Anna Tvedt with SDSU Extension, and I'm going to let some of my coworkers introduce themselves too. I see Audra's off mute.
Hey there, I'm Audra Scheel. I'm a 4-H educator in Sanborn, Jerauld, and Buffalo counties. Welcome today.
Hi, I'm Janelle Peterson. I am the Farm to School Coordinator through Department of Education. So I do a lot of work with schools, and I am happy to be here as well.
Hello, I am Christine Wood. I am the 4-H STEM Field Specialist for SDSU Extension, and I am housed in the Sioux Falls Regional Center.
Great. So we're excited to talk to you about Beef to School in South Dakota. Hopefully we'll answer your questions for you. This presentation is based off of our recently published frequently asked questions about Beef to School in South Dakota document. And so we're excited to share the information with you that we've published there. Just a few housekeeping things as we get started. We have a Q&A feature in Zoom today, so feel free to drop a question in there at any point if we haven't answered a question that you have, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. There's also the chat feature. Feel free to use that as you'd like for any comments along the way, but we will try to focus our questions in that Q&A feature. If you have any trouble with that, feel free to drop a comment, and Matt's here to help you with any technical questions. We'll be sending out a follow-up email, so all the links and information that we share today, you'll be getting that in your email account tomorrow. And this is being recorded so that we can share it on our YouTube and website pages long into the future. So just to be aware of that. So we want to just start out today sharing a little bit of the results from our recent Beef to School report, which is very exciting because it's the first time that we've done a report on farm to school at all, but this time we did, and it was specifically focused on Beef to School last spring. Audra and Janelle and I worked very closely with our Population Health Evaluation Center to write this survey that went out to all the school districts in the state. And as you can see, we had 186 different school food service directors in the state. 112 schools participated in the survey, and it really is serving as a great baseline for Beef to School in South Dakota, although what we found is that a good majority, about 1/3 of the schools in the state, are already doing Beef to School. So I suppose it's not so much a baseline as it is a midpoint and just the first time we started measuring it. But that was really encouraging news. It's also interesting, I think, that what we found was that 56% of the schools, so SFA is School Food Authority, that's the person who makes the decisions around the school meal programs at the district. So when you see that abbreviation there, just think kind of food service director. But about 56% of those SFAs that were not already using local beef were interested in starting. And so, we've got room to grow and lots of interest in people wanting to get going with Beef to School. And on the right here, I think another interesting piece of information is that those who are using local beef, almost 50% there were in their first year of sourcing local beef, and another 30% had only been doing it for 1 to 3 years. And another 20 at 4 to 6 years. So it's really kind of see that stepwise increase in how many people are getting started each and every year. And so we're excited to hopefully see that trend continue.
In this slide here, you can just see across the state kind of where those food service directors are using local beef. And then they're in the blue, and then in the yellow there you can see the processors that are participating in Beef to School. So they're kind of scattered across the state. Obviously, there's room to grow there as well.
We found some perceived benefits, which included better food quality. They thought this was definitely better food quality. Also, the perception of school meals by parents, administration, students, and then a little bit on lower meal program costs and increased consumption of meat. On the perceived challenges side, I don't think we were surprised by anything we saw, but it certainly gave us the data that we need, that helps us as we're looking for ways to solve these problems. So we know schools have a lack of storage space. They just don't have unlimited walk-in freezer capacity. We also know that there's limited processing facilities. We just don't have enough processing facilities out there. And finding producers was the last one.
So it's great to know these things and so that our team can be working on addressing those challenges. We did also drop the link and you'll have it with you after the presentation to the full report. So this is just kind of a high level synopsis of some of those things we thought were the most interesting for you to know. But we'll get into this FAQ now and some of those questions. There's a screenshot of it on the left, so that's what you're looking for if you want to go visit our extension website and pull that full document out yourself. But we're going to go through some of the highlights. Some different schools and producers were interviewed in this process of making the FAQ, so we'll share some of what they reported, some introductory information, some stuff on food safety and product labeling, how to incorporate local beef into meal programs, and some logistics on the donating and selling of local beef to schools. And we'll wrap up with just some additional related resources that we think you might be interested in. But first, we'd like to acknowledge everyone who contributed to getting this FAQ done and to the quality that it is. So just a moment to say thank you to everyone on the page here. And let's get started with a little bit of the why and the benefits on Beef to School, building off of what was kind of shown in that report. Here's the first quote from Virginia Utter, one of the folks who was interviewed for this FAQ update. And she's out in Bison School District. She said, "For us, Beef to School is about trying to provide the best food we can for kids. Kids light up if you tell them their food is from a producer they know. We've seen an increase in the number of students eating school lunch since starting Beef to School." That's a great highlight to benefit to highlight right when trying to convince others that Beef to School is worthwhile. More students eating school lunch, that's a great thing.
The next comment is from Lynn Dunker in Wall. Lynn has really been is really our poster child for starting Beef to School. And so she notes that Beef to School is a win-win because it puts dollars into the local economy and kids know where their food comes from. The concept from Wall is really quite interesting. They were having community members were having an economic development meeting, as they do every month, and somebody said, "Why can't we serve beef at the school, local beef at the school?" And one of the local meat processors was there, and they took the bull by the horns, if you will, and really went forward on this. And so it was just community members going, what would be good for our community? What would be good for our schools? And this is what we see a lot with local food in general, but we see also specifically with Beef to School. It's one of our highest items that we see served across the state in the local food program. So, or the Farm to School program. So again, kudos to Lynn because she really has worked hard and pioneered this movement for Beef to School.
Absolutely. And, one of her great resources out there is Ken from Wall Meat Processing. And Ken says, "Beef to School demonstrates the goodness of South Dakota and the food we produce. We don't have to buy from other states and countries. What we grow right here in South Dakota is really the best in the world." And Ken is a leader in Beef to School. The Wall Meat program services 32 schools with over 60 producers contributing to those plates and those nutrition programs.
I'm going to talk a little bit about child nutrition program requirements and just to bring you up to speed on what that might look like pertaining to beef to school. So when you are looking to serve beef to school or sell beef to schools, the child nutrition programs, and we're really kind of talking more school lunch here today, but they assume that they're participating in the federal program, the National School Lunch Program. There are sometimes some state requirements that they may have, and sometimes you might see that at tribal or local or school levels. So it's always good to ask, but pretty much everybody has to have what they call a meat alternate in their menus, and that's where that beef falls, is under that meat alternate, aka protein, if you will. So the other thing is, no one size fits all programs. There is no application for beef to school. There is no way you are supposed to be running your beef to school program. It's all about how you want to do it in your community and school. So it's great to get ideas and hear what others are doing, but taking baby steps and starting slowly and thinking, oh my gosh, it's got to be on the plate every day. No, that might be nice, but it may not be realistic either. And so you just work with your food service director and your school administration on what beef to school might look like in your community and school.
So building off of that, we're going to share, what the guide has, and what we'll be presenting today is both requirements of beef to school and recommendations. And so it's great we have Janelle from our state food service authority with the Department of Education there to provide those requirements, and we'll slide in some recommendations too, because as we've learned what some of those questions are, there's a little bit of those nitty-gritty things that maybe could be different from town to town, but are still kind of helpful to know. So let's start too with what is beef to school. And that is pretty broad. There's not a one size fits all definition, kind of building off what Janelle just mentioned. But it is a more specific version of farm to school. And farm to school is kind of a concept that includes these three core elements, which are procurement, so serving a local food product in school meals or any child nutrition program, but we tend to be speaking about school lunch, as Janelle mentioned. Education, conducting educational activities about products that are grown in the local agricultural system. So we'll hint towards another webinar happening tomorrow that Christine Wood, who's on today, can tell us a little bit about at the end of this session. And then the third is school gardens, or maybe in the case of beef to school, that could be more like hands-on agriculture, helping to learn about the process of growing these animals. So we tend to focus mostly on serving local products in school meals. That seems to be where a lot of the interest lies, especially with beef to school. But we do have some resources related to the other elements. So like I said, we'll mention those here at the end. So farm to school, beef to school really is any combination of any of these activities. Doesn't have to be all of these different activities, can be just one, can be all three, but it can be any kind of level of participation as long as it includes one of these elements. Speaking of definitions that are pretty broad, the definition of local, there's not a set definition of what local has to mean for each beef to school program or farm to school program. This came out of our farm to school resource guide here in South Dakota, and shows some different examples of what local could be defined as. So it could stretch as far as maybe a large radius around the community that you're in. This example is based off of Peter. It could be defined as within the state of South Dakota, or it could be defined more locally. And I think with beef specifically, we see something more like this third image where it's a smaller radius around a location. Not too many schools are actually saying that beef must be sourced from within 45 miles to be considered local. I think it's really more general, more more like about as far away as we need to go in order to reasonably make this happen, right? That kind of tends to be the definition for local for fruits and vegetables and for beef. And so luckily in South Dakota, our beef production is a lot higher than it is for things like fruits and vegetables. And so it is more realistic to stay within kind of the county or the school district, or maybe another county over for the most part. So those are some examples. And again, it can be tailored to what works in each community. Can you sign up for the Beef to School program? I think it's understandable that we get this question a lot. You can sign up for the South Dakota Farm to School Network newsletter, which we've got a little snippet of down there at the bottom that some of our core team members send each month. However, Beef to School, since it is so adaptable from community to community, is not one program that, say, us at Extension or Janelle at Department of Education runs that you can opt into. Rather, we are here to help you to adapt these concepts for what might work in your community. And so signing up for the newsletter is just one of those ways that you can stay in touch with some of the resources that we're putting out that we think can help you. And we're also always available to assist, answer questions, sit down for a call. Anything that might help you develop what the Beef to School program looks like in your local community. So not so much a statewide program, but a program that you do at the local level.
So who should be involved in your local Beef to School program? So it really is up to you and tailor-made to your community. So recommendations that we have is your child nutrition program director, your state or federally inspected slaughter or processing facility, beef producers in the area. Additional supporters might be teachers, administration, school board members, really whoever you think is going to be passionate about this program and help you get that beef on those kids' plates.
So when's the best time to start a Beef to School program? There's really no wrong time. But I will just kind of lay out a little timeline so that you're aware of what, and I'm going to speak to the child nutrition folks, what that looks like from their world. So in the beginning, already in January and February, they are writing their menus for the following school year. And so just know that they may be reaching out, looking for some opportunities to get beef in their program and get things solidified. In May, they're really busy, and it's not always the time of the year that they're thinking about that. Often, most of our food service directors don't work in the summer, and then here we are in August, the start of a busy school year. So that January, February time is a good time, but also realize this is a really new program, a really new concept, if you will. Now, I know, we've seen a lot of growth over the last year. We expect to see a lot more. So there's going to be folks that are just reaching out and going, I just want to try something. I just want to do something. So really, it might be any time of the year that a food service director gets bold enough to try to do this, or perhaps the rancher is bold enough to say, hey, would you be interested in serving my beef? And so, it's all about just that baby step process again, what works, and then just kind of dipping your toe in the water, if you will.
Right. And I'll talk to the producer end of that too. They might not always have an animal available, depending on if they're a cow-calf producer, maybe they're a feedlot to finish operator. So look at the producers in your area and start having those conversations. And it's just one of those things that great ideas coming to fruition. So, have a sit down, pool those resource people together and start developing that plan that's going to work for you and your community.
I'm going to add one more thing to that. Could you go back a second, Anna? So another thing is that the reason schools start working on their menus in January and February is because they have to order their USDA commodities for the following year at that time of the year. So often that means they're going to be purchasing ground beef from commodities. That's one of the big things that they purchase. Now, I will tell you, most of those schools are out of ground beef by the end of February, beginning of March. So March, April, May timeframe might be a great time to also be looking at bringing something in. May meal counts are pretty low. We've got a lot of field trips and things going on. So really that March timeframe, maybe up until the middle of April might be a nice time as well. Again, I'm not saying that's the only time, but just when they might need some inventory or need some product for their menus to finish out the rest of the year, that's always a very nice time to look into things as well. Next slide. So we're also going to, oops, yeah, that's me. I am also going to talk about a little food safety and product labeling. What are the slaughter and processing requirements for local beef to be served in school nutrition programs in South Dakota? Tammy Anderson notes that the inspection process requires sampling of meat products to ensure the product is safe for the consumer, which of course is especially important when consumers are children. The mark of inspection assures safety measures are in place beyond the requirements for the custom exempt and retail exempt licenses. So where can I find inspected slaughter and processing establishments? So we've got this particular slide lists state and federal and CIS establishments. So when you'll be getting these slides in the mail, a copy of these slides. And so you'll be able to click on those links from that previous slide so you can get further information. On this page, you're seeing the state inspected facilities. This is from the Animal Industry Board. I'm going to show you a couple more things on that particular website. But this is updated. Will you go back just a second, Anna? This is updated monthly. And so this is what we drive schools to when they call and ask about who might be a state inspected facility, and we drive them to this page. Go ahead. Labeling requirements. So you have to have one of the it either has to be state inspected or federally inspected. So you see the seal there for the state inspected and the USDA inspected. That has to be on every package of meat that the school receives. Schools are not allowed to accept the not for sale stamping on a meat. So again, you've got to have they've got to have the state or USDA federally inspected seal. Go ahead. So this is the Animal Industry Board. Right above their logo, you can see the website link. So go into that website link, and they have so much good information on this site. You can see that the third point is the list of inspected establishments. There is the sixth one, I think, which is selling and distributing red meat in South Dakota. And there is a meat not for sale extension article. So again, really, really good information on this page related to a lot of the state information.
I think I might just add a little bit if that's okay, Janelle.
Yes, absolutely,
yeah.
please.
So like as she mentioned, just to reiterate, it can be state inspected or federally inspected, but has to have that mark of inspection, which is noted with that logo on the stamp on the package. Another one, and so state, you'll find on that website that we listed out the federal processing facilities, if they have federal inspection, but maybe not state inspection, you find them then on the USDA FSIS inspection webpage. So be looking on both. If you're trying to find the closest to you, there might be one or the other, either state inspected or federally inspected. And then if it is federally inspected, then it's allowed to cross state lines. But if it's state inspected, it has to be sold within the state of South Dakota. And so if you are close to the border, and there is a USDA federally inspected plant across the state line, that is fair game, as well as the CIS program. So that allows state inspected facilities to sell across state lines if they are in the CIS, the Cooperative Interstate Shipment Program. And so I know we have a few border states that are involved with that. And so just another webpage to check out in order to know what the closest one to you is. And again, if you have any questions about finding a facility that's eligible for processing and for schools, please feel free to reach out and let us answer your question. So anything else you'd like to add, Janelle, before I move on here?
Just the other thing is just simple, which is call the facility, if you're wondering about one of your local meat lockers and whether they are state or federally approved, just call them and ask them. They will obviously know. So let's go into some food safety considerations when we're transporting the beef to the school. So child nutrition programs typically work with their health inspectors. Part of what happens with the National School Lunch Program is they have some standard operating procedures for keeping food safe and that sort of thing. So they'll have some of those standard operating procedures that they kind of know on their end. Processors should follow their HACCP plans, HACCP being hazard analysis critical control points. Make sure when you're transporting that product that the frozen foods remain frozen. So you may want them in coolers, you may want them in boxes, you might want them with ice packs. Stay away. So that's good. And then if it's a longer drive, just check that temperature occasionally. And you're thinking, Janelle, how do we check the temperature? You can buy what's called a digital stem thermometer, and then you can just place it in between the packages of meat. And what we're trying to keep that temperature at in frozen is 0 or below. So you just don't want to eat. That's the best thing that you're looking for. Practice good hygiene, clean hands, clean clothes, all of that sort of thing. And of course, it needs to be transported in a clean vehicle.
All right.
So,
speaking of
that's you.
Frozen space, yeah. The freezers can be the barrier. I think we mentioned that right back at the beginning when we were showing those results of the report. So we know schools are always interested how they maybe could do beef to school without much freezer space and overcoming that barrier. So we have a few ideas here. Sometimes they could hold on to some of the beef in the school kitchen and some at the processing facility if the facility is agreeable and has the space, so that we don't ever want to assume that. And so worth asking in case that is a possibility. Also requesting incremental deliveries to allow for more frequent beef product usage and restocking kind of within the school. And so maybe that means that the orders are spaced out with the processing facility, say one every month, with deliveries every month, just so that it's a smaller batch that's delivered at a time so that it can fit within the freezers. This is a real life image from South Dakota. I forget which district it is, but so not a ton of space that they're working with there when you think about how many students they're serving those products to each day, and the quantity they could be going through. So, and then one thing just to keep in mind is sometimes there are some funding sources available to help purchase and expand freezer capacity for schools, and following along with our Farm to School Network newsletter will be a great place to know if and when those opportunities do arise.
So a little bit more on that food safety and action piece. from our friends over at the Bison School District. They send a school board member out to look at that animal before it is sent to the processing facility, and that's something that they determined that they wanted to keep ongoing even after they did their first one. Wall meats, they are a state and federally inspected program, and they choose to take even a little bit more, a little bit more effort into that safety practices. And so they're doing a voluntary product sampling is sent to the SDSU to test for pathogens or other alterations. And so this is just providing that extra step of confidence that the beef product that they are putting into the school system is safe. And so there's a lot of different things that different communities can put into place. But the most important is that food safety aspect for our kids.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how to incorporate local beef into child nutrition programs. We often get a question about, does the school have to change recipes to use local beef? No, local beef is interchangeable with any beef recipe. So if you've got a goulash or a spaghetti that you're using and you need ground beef, it's going to slide right in there. Same thing with like a beef stew or beef stroganoff, and you might be cutting up roast or getting stew meat, that sort of thing. I think we didn't mention it before, but our farm to school report told us that the biggest thing that the schools used was ground beef, and I'm looking quickly, beef patties. Beef patties was the second highest thing. So ground beef and beef patties is what was most used right now, according to our survey. Fat requirement, there are some fat content requirements in the program. Easiest thing that I would tell you to do is don't sell the schools or plan that the schools will ask you for anything less than an 80-20, and likely they're going to ask for an 85-15. And 85-15 is also what the USDA commodity beef is that child nutrition programs receive. So that fat content, providing that fat content to them, then also, of course, is very interchangeable in their recipes.
Absolutely. So how much beef can you expect from one animal? So start to finish, approximately 40% of the live weight will yield into pounds of edible beef. So if we start at a 1,200 pound steer, that carcass weight, we're typically going to get, 62 to 64% of that weight, hanging weight. And then we've got approximately 490 pounds of edible cuts left to utilize. And so that needs to be taken into consideration when you're processing those animals and your different live weights, whether you're buying a live weight animal directly from the producer, or maybe you're buying it from the processor who has already sourced that local beef.
We're going to talk. Oh, I think it's you, Anna. Sorry.
Okay, my mouse takes a second to get to the button there. We'll transition now into local beef donations and sales to child nutrition programs and how each of those may occur. So how does a school receive local beef? It could be through a donation, or it could be a direct purchase from the producer, or a direct purchase from the locker or that processor. And we're going to dive in first to donations and then next into sales. And so how could someone donate to a Beef to School program? And I do want to, caveat this and say, we know donations are happening across South Dakota with Beef to School programs, that's a common mechanism that many schools are using. And that the reason behind that oftentimes is because producers or community members want to see it done. And so they have that generous heart that says that they'd like to provide this for the schools. It's not something that You know, we would of course encourage school districts to pay for the beef when especially because they do have the budgets that can do that. And so donations are never an expectation of beef to school programs, but rather we realize that they are a reality within South Dakota. And if someone wants to be generous and provide that, there are some ways to do so. So we're providing the information on it, but at the same time, kind of encouraging schools that they do have the budgets and can purchase those local products. So we want to see producers and processors, of course, earning their fair income from the products that they provide. So how are some ways that you could donate to a Beef to School program? Monetary to the child nutrition program or school to support that beef product processing expenses would be an example. Live animals donated by the producer to the child nutrition program or the slaughter and processing facility. So donating an animal, donating dollars, donating the processing costs. Maybe that's donated by the facility, or maybe that's in a cash donation. And then also transportation, that donation of time or resources to transport either the live beef animal or the finished beef product to the school. So you can get creative if there's ways that you'd like to help your community out in making this program happen. All right, and now just to talk about sales, you know, as Audra and I were doing some interviews as far as what are the questions about Beef to School, and even just wrapping our own heads about it, I know myself especially, there are several different ways that this kind of transaction can occur or how it might happen. And so we tried to make some sense out of it, but really the moral of the story is there's several ways. And that's kind of the moral of a lot of these Q&As, which you're seeing here. But so when do sales transactions and changes of ownership kind of occur along that process? There's several different routes of ownership and payment that might happen. And so there's three kind of examples here. So the first one, along the left arrows would be starting up with the rancher with the animal, kind of owning that animal, taking it in, getting it processed, and then selling the finished product to the school would be one example. In the center, that second example here is that the rancher might sell the product to the processing facility. I think this is what they do out in Wall, and then the processing facility is the one that coordinates then with the school and then sells the finished product. They've added that processing value to the school. And then a third route might be that the rancher sells the animal to the school district, who then pays for the processing and finished product. So oftentimes in this example, the rancher is probably taking the animal to the processing facility. The school is probably not going and, you know, picking it up and doing that transport. So, but different examples that might take place there. And all of which are acceptable.
So types of funding that are available to help child nutrition programs purchase local beef. So child nutrition programs in schools obviously have their own school budget line. And as part of that budget, food purchases are a standalone item, which is where schools would have the money to pay for local beef. We have been encouraging, I was just on a call with superintendents around the state, and I put a plug in for them to, when they start that budget process, to think about earmarking about 5 to 10% of their budget for the purchase of local foods. Now, I'd like to see a little more, but I just wanted to just plant the seed and start our administrative people thinking about how can we specifically hold some of that budget for local foods, and in this particular instance, local beef. So the people always say, how do they buy? How can a school buy this food with all their regulations? We have in child nutrition programs what we call a micro purchase process. And that falls under, we have two different kinds of ways to purchase. One is informal, one is formal. So Typically, schools are going to be using this informal process, and one of those processes is the micro purchase process. It is a very simple process. The food service directors have to determine, is what I'm buying a reasonable price? Is the price that they are saying they're going to sell this to me reasonable? And how are they going to decide what reasonable is? Well, they're going to look in potentially their grocery store and see what they're selling per pound of product. They're going to look and see what their vendor is selling. Now, we always tell them to be careful because some of their distributors probably are getting they're buying this in mass quantities. And so the price that they can get per pound may be unreasonably low compared to what you might see in South Dakota. So we always tell them to take that with a grain of salt. Because again, as with all local food, we know that local beef is it's healthier, it's more nutrient dense, it's fresher. And so, and folks know where that came from. So that's also worth considering in the price of that product. One of the second things that we look at in the micro purchase process is individual purchases have to be less than $10,000. And that's a pretty easy thing to meet with anything to do with local foods. They have to purchase from an approved source or vendor. What does that mean? So basically that means that we have to purchase from somebody who's responsible and responsive. That means responsive means I'm putting out a call for beef. Do you have beef? And if a pig farmer replies, that's not being responsive because we wanted beef and not pork, right? A responsible vendor, if you will, is one that does what you asked them to do. You said that you wanted 500 pounds of ground beef and beef patties, and you wanted it packaged certain ways and some of that. And if that's not the way that happens, then that's not being responsible. So again, those are kind of some of the things that they look for. They also look at the food safety piece, and they may even want to, it's like that picture that we saw from Bison, where the school board member goes out and takes a look at the ranch where these cattle are. They're going to make sure that there's no food safety concerns at this ranch. So that's the simple process of becoming an approved vendor. Part of micro purchase means that I have to rotate my purchases equitably among suppliers as allowable. So if I buy a beef from farmer A, then the next time I have to buy my beef from farmer B. And if there's another farmer that I could buy from, then I'm going to buy it from farmer C. And then I need to just continue to rotate my purchases around so that everybody has a chance to have a share of these federal dollars that school nutrition programs are given. The federal government wants to make sure that everybody gets a chance at having the opportunity to sell to schools. Now, what if you only have one rancher in the area that is selling beef, and the next one is 100 miles away, and that would cause a lot of problems? Then you can continue buying from that rancher in your area. So again, if you have questions on that, don't hesitate to contact me. And then the last piece is just to maintain invoices or receipts to document purchases. That's pretty much on the child nutrition program person's end of things, but that does mean that our ranchers do need to provide some kind of invoice to them so that they have that so they can get paid. Also, remember, school boards or working with a school often means that you're not going to get paid immediately. That's sometimes a 4 to 6 week lag depending on when that is purchased. They typically have to go through school board meetings to be approved. Once the expense is approved, then the check gets cut. So that's kind of the procurement process.
So I'll share a little bit about how Beef to School has been impacted here locally where I live. And our Wessington Springs School District, when they started Beef to School, our first beef was donated by a local 4-H member who had an open cow come up in his herd. And once people heard what we were trying to do, we had other donations to help pay for the processing. We had local farmers that said, absolutely, I'll haul that cow to the processing facility. And another producer hauled it back once she was processed. So there's a lot of different people involved in that. And the first step really is seeking out those people and that call to action so that you can make it possible in your own communities. I've had a couple other school districts jump on board here locally, and it's always fun to see what they're doing as far as different things they're providing, and different ways they're going about things. So this is a Beef to School program over in Hockin County School District, so out in that Phillip neighborhood. So they had people who donated. They had either kids or grandkids in the school. Their first donation came from a school board member. So like we said before, it's finding those people that are going to be passionate about this program that live right next to you.
Another example from Wall Meat, Ken says that I donate the first beef to a school and charge the processing fee. After that, I buy the beef from the rancher, process it, and sell the final product to the school. Virginia Utter is also one of our rising stars in the farm to school arena. And so she paid the rancher for the live weight, which was determined by the processing facility. And then the rancher paid for the cost of processing. Win-win for the rancher because they were able to accept the income from the beef, and then the processing. I don't know how they handled that part, but again, there's not any wrong way to do things with this. So there's lots of creative ways that beef can be paid for and not always donated. I will tell you that most of the time, one of their first ones is donated. That just seems to be the trend. And that's okay. But again, we really do want to, like Anna's been saying, they have money to purchase food. And so they can pay for this. Now, I completely understand if you are a community member and you want to give back to the school and you want to donate that beef or you want to donate that processing, that is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But or as a retired person looking for something to give back to the community, this is an excellent way for somebody to be able to do that and know that it's staying right in their community. And I think coming up, yes, this is we shot some farm to school videos, and this is the one from Bison School District, and I think you'll really enjoy it.
This beef is from the Larson family, and the kids, whenever you go out and say, hey guys, our beef today is brought to you by the Larson family, and the kids are like, that's me, that's my beef. My name is Virginia Utter. I live in Bison, South Dakota, and I am the head cook at the Bison School. 136 is our enrollment, kindergarten through 12th grade. When I first started the Farm to School program, I came in and went to our school board and I said, I think we're going to do this. Can you help me? Right then and there, one of our school board members donated our first beef, and it has taken off from there. First thing I did was get on Facebook and be like, we will take all the produce you're tired of dealing with. It showed up in groves. I think our community feeds into the fact that everybody is always trying to help each other. Everybody that donates either has kids or grandkids, I think, in our school. What I have usually comes in and goes straight into our salad bar. We have a full salad bar every day. Today is brisket or chicken fajitas. We have the hash brown casserole. We have coleslaw as our vegetable. We have applesauce as our fruit.
The Farm to School program at Bison is driven by a passionate individual, Virginia Utter, that's our head cook, and she has grown the program. I mean, the quality of food in our school district is pretty outstanding. Things that we all grew up on, they were on our kitchen table. We still have that dinner table meal here at our school. So it's really not the size of your school, it's the passion of your head cook.
I'm just here for the kids. That's it. I'm just here to make sure our kids grow healthy. And it just makes my heart feel good to know that these kids are getting fresh fruits and vegetables every day on our salad bar. That the meat that we're giving them, they know where it came from.
I just think it's important. It's better to have home-raised beef around here than it is to get processed beef.
It definitely does taste better to eat local beef. I'm Xander and I'm 6th grade. I've been showing cattle since I was in 2nd grade.
He raises his 4-H beef, but he has a buddy, and we're buying the buddy.
I have both animals so that my market steer would grow better, so he thinks he needs to eat more, so then he gets fatter and then I can sell him.
Generally, they'll donate the processing, and then we pay for the beef. We get a lot of corn. We have 2 different families that have children that grow corn.
It's heartwarming to know that we can bring something to the school program and other kids get to try it too instead of just grocery store sweet corn. They get it fresh from the field.
And I buy from them. They know I'm going to get 5 dozen every year. And then whenever we need to, I start freezing it so that we can have corn all year long. We have eggs on our salad bar every day. We bake with all of our eggs. We have a breakfast program, so 100% of our school eggs are from our Farm to School program. They are fresh eggs from Becca.
I got chickens and I was making a hobby of it and I had so many eggs. My husband said, I think you need to start selling eggs. So I got my egg handler's license through the state of South Dakota. And after I did that, it seems like things kind of just took off. I am so blessed to be able to do this. I love that sweet little babies are getting my eggs.
We're always looking for ways as a school district to get parent and community involvement in the school. This would be another component that helps drive that.
I sit down with the kids and ask them the things that they would like to have. And then we do our best to do what we can to give them that. And I know the high school kids appreciate that.
That spreads to our kids because now they're more engaged, right? They see the school as more than just some place I go to learn. It's just a win-win for everybody.
We are the Farm to School community. Yeah!
Well, if you liked that video, we have 2 more, one from Huron and one from Rapid City Catholic Schools. The Rapid City Catholic Schools one does have another focus on beef to school, and so we encourage you to check those out as well. I know we're running a little short on time, so I want to share with you some additional resources before we wrap up and take a couple questions. And just to note that in the FAQ document, there are a couple appendices. One is a sample solicitation. Janelle was just kind of talking through some of those things on the school nutrition side for sourcing local meat. And this is an example that was provided by Wall School District. And there's one from Montana as well. And then Audra and Janelle and I had come up with some of those common terminology for beef to school. I know myself being more familiar with child nutrition, but not so much the beef side and vice versa. I think with Audra, we were able to kind of balance each other's knowledge and hopefully provide that for you as well. There's a couple other resources we think are awesome and would love to share out with you. And one of them is this school food service beef resource guide. And this is more, now you have the beef in the cafeteria, what do you do with it? Where our guide is more how to get it into the cafeteria. And so that link is available there. It was Wisconsin Beef Industry Council that came up with this one. And the USDA has a wonderful resource about procuring local foods for child nutrition programs. So more details on how to get the product into the school, especially for those who are working in child nutrition programs. I think they're more responsible for knowing those details than the producers or folks who are selling or donating are. And I will just mention this and then let Audra and Christine, we've been working together within our extension team to bring nutrition together with 4-H. And so we have a couple of resources. We've talked a lot about the FAQ, and so I'll let Audra and Christine mention this education pillar of Farm to School, as we discussed at the beginning, that procurement is one, education is another. And so here's our resource we have for education.
Thanks, Anna. Yes, so we have our Adopt a Cow beef program, which is the education piece of the Beef to School. It's an opportunity to bring beef education into the classroom, into the school. There's 6 lessons that walk kids through what it's like to produce beef in the state of South Dakota. And the students get to follow an actual beef calf that is here in the state of South Dakota. So they get to see how that calf grows and learn about how farmers and ranchers take care of their cattle. And so that's a really awesome opportunity for schools to bring it full circle, serving the beef in the lunchroom, but also providing youth with the education of how the beef got there.
Yeah, and if you have questions about that program, please reach out to one of us. We're excited that there's quite a few counties within the state that already have this. All of our 4-H advisors received one in our counties, and many of our school districts have as well. So please ask if it's in your community already.
And we do have a webinar tomorrow at 5:30 about the Adopt a Cow materials specific to that. Please join us if you're interested. Oh, and our photo didn't pop up, but Janelle, if you want to mention this last resource.
Yes, so the Patrick Leahy Farm to School Grant Program, this is available on an annual basis. It gives, it's a competitive grant process that supports planning, developing, and implementing farm to school programs. We just checked, I checked right before we came on, and it still isn't open. We're expecting it to open any moment. And so another good reason to sign up for our Farm to School Network newsletter is that we keep all of these grant opportunities listed in there, so that there are opportunities for you to go after these competitive grants.
Okay, and here we have our contact information. We will send these slides out to you, and so you'll have it in the slides when we send it via email tomorrow as well, if you don't get it jotted down quite fast enough today. But with that, I think we will stop our
Melissa
show.
Melissa has a question in the chat. As a parent who would like to see Beef to School get off the ground in our district, what's the best first step to take? Talk to the food service director, find a producer to donate, something else. That would be yes, yes, and yes. However you want to do it, Melissa. So reach out to the food service director, make sure they're open to the idea. Some schools are unable to handle raw meat, but that's the first. I would reach out to the food service director. If they're not sure, always reach out to school administration, the superintendent, the business manager. That might be the place that I would think about starting first, and then see where that can grow to. If you know a producer who's interested in donating, gosh, be sure to drop their name and or hook those names up with the school. So any way that you can get the information, the school board, somebody on the school board is also a great way to introduce that beef to school, and they may ask their superintendent to check more into it. And of course, then they'll go down to the food service director. So there's lots of ways to get your foot in the door on that. Even a teacher, because look at the Adopt a Cow program. What a great hand-in-hand project that could be. So good luck. I hope it works.
I'll also even add in there too, sometimes I hear that, food service directors, they just don't have enough staff to possibly process those extra fruits and vegetables. Maybe it's a staffing issue, or process, serve beef, cut up beef, that kind of thing. So maybe it's a chance for you to volunteer locally in your food service areas that, maybe they need a hand certain days a week to do those things. And what a great connection and partnership and a relationship that you can build with that food service director to get the ball rolling.
Well, it looks like we answered your question. So please feel free, if anyone has another one, to drop that in the Q&A feature, or we'll receive it in the chat as well. We'll just hold on, I guess, another minute in case anyone is typing. But otherwise, we definitely want to thank you for joining today. And we are always available to answer your questions into the future. Like I said, we'll hang out just a couple minutes, but if you don't have any other questions, you're free to hop off. All right, well, I think that's a wrap. Oh,
there's Carla.
Carla was typing.
There you go, Carla.
Janelle, this looks like a you question.
If schools purchase only from an approved locker, are they still spreading the wealth? Sure. I mean, there's only so many lockers in the area. And so if there's just that one in your area, then that's the one you're going to use. So, and you're just going to note that in your procurement plan, Carla, that the only locker that's within, a 50-mile radius or whatever that is, USDA or state inspected. That's the reason that you continue to purchase from them time after time. You are welcome. Glad to see you on the call.
Okay, I think that's a wrap. We'll see you guys tonight.
All right, sounds good. Thanks. Bye.